Yeah, let's continue. But yeah, really quick. Yeah, I think Jason did a pretty good introduction for both of us. But really quick to add to that, I come in into this presentation purely from a UX design perspective, and that's sort of what I bring along the story, and then let Marcelo, if you want to add anything else about yourself.
Sure. This will be a presentation just out of passion. So we're going to be sharing our learnings. We're not selling anything. We created a tool to help designers, but it doesn't mean that anyone needs to use that. We'll share at the end, and it's an open source tool. So I'm very curious, before we begin, to understand your expectations about accessibility. I'm gonna randomly pick someone. You're always the first person. What is your expectation about this set?
I think for me, the reason I was so excited about this one is, where do I start? I think whenever we sit down during a brainstorm session, nobody brings up accessibility all the way towards the end of the discussion. So how do we bring that to the forefront? Where do I start, and how do I bring that as part of the discussion early on? So that's what I want to know.
Thank you. We'll meet your expectations. Anyone else want to share expectations? You can be shy. What can I ask you? There you go. Thank you.
So I work for a children's hospital.
Okay.
And it's all about donations, and it's all about reaching an audience that you haven't met yet. So one of the biggest audiences is disability, and it's how do you, we work on meeting the Spanish audience, many audiences, but this is one of the one untapped, I don't want to call it that, but it is an audience that helps in the donation world. So.
Needless to say that most patients are disabled, and the families of the patients, they probably go on a website to donate, right? Who else wants to share something?
So at the Orlando Museum of Art, we have monthly events where people with learning disabilities, it's a networking event specifically for them. It's an art-related event. So really it's a hands-on experience, and because you get to connect with people in the similar situation, it helps out that you have the sense of community, I think, which is important in accessibility, when you don't feel like you're the only one there and there's someone who can guide you and help you along the way.
Thank you. Anyone online wants to share an expectation about this session? I want to make sure I hit everyone's expectations. There you go. I have a hand raised.
Melanie.
Hi, thank you. I'm coming from Miami. I heard that this week on Thursday is Accessibility Day. So I'm interested to see what new things are out there, other organizations and events to follow, knowing that this is pretty relevant this week.
Yes, indeed. This is the Global Awareness Day on Thursday. So we celebrate GAD. I'm going to be sharing something about that. By show of hands, either local or virtual, how many people here are involved in creating digital solutions? Okay. How many people here actually have to meet accessibility requirements? Okay, that's a good size. All right. Thanks for sharing all of this. That helped me set my expectations. What do I have to say? Do you want to take the agenda, Diego? I think you're muted.
Yeah, so I was saying, I think as part of this, we'll probably be touching upon, some of those things around, how to continue to shift left and, start to prioritize accessibility more. So this is potentially one approach to get to that. But yeah, so we're going to talk about addressing usability with accessibility in mind. So we'll describe that, and we're going to be covering at a high level, priority guides as a tool. So this might be new for a lot of you. And then ultimately, we'll showcase a solution that that would allow you to create accessible prototypes. All right, let's continue.
Okay, I see Andrea has her hand raised. You want to unmute Andrea? Is there anything you want to share? Maybe not.
I think that was
I'm the same thing with them. Interested in like how did it begin? Because usually I focus on either contrast and like main things, but there's more susceptibility to keep in mind just to grow it. What else can I attribute more into it, and then use that in my practice daily. So it's a good beginning. And thank you.
all
All
right.
right, thank you.
All right, yeah, so we want to cover a little bit of, you know, the current state, like how is usability being addressed when you try to factor in accessibility. And basically, I think for a lot of us, I think we saw a few designers in the room as well as on Zoom. Typically, we go pretty visual with anything that we call a prototype. And that makes it actually difficult to include all users. And so if we think of inclusion and beyond, you know, sighted individuals and anyone with, you know, all senses, yeah, visual prototypes make it difficult. And a few things around that. The main thing that we're going to be highlighting today is that visual prototypes don't tend to capture content and structure. So I think sometimes we might be able to represent, you know, visual elements like boxes and buttons and images, but we're not necessarily using real content or indicating a hierarchy if you think of headlines and you know, applying proper HTML semantics. But those things might also not be interactive. So if you're doing things like InVision, which are great for getting feedback, but again, that's basically a flat image that may not be as interactive or anything that is easy for assistive technologies to interpret. And then a lot of times when we go visual, it's just built-in bias towards aesthetics. So I think a lot of times you might start to, you know, play around with the typography, you know, if you're gonna make the corners round, or if you're gonna, you know, create a particular style. So it creates a bias and a tendency to focus on aesthetics rather than content. So yeah, these are some examples, and then ultimately, this excludes people with disabilities early in the process. And that has to do with, again, not having proper content, because a lot of times we might be using lorem ipsum or Greek or some sort of placeholder content that is not necessarily close to real language or real content. And then this creates barriers if you're thinking of being inclusive.
Right, I want to add to that because if you think about that, when we want to speed up the process, we just throw a Latin text on a UI just to get some feedback on the layout, on the navigation, on the interaction design. But what we forget about is if you don't have good content, anyone with assistive technology that relies on assistive technology, they cannot use that because they will listen Latin text, right? So I think that's why I want you to pay attention to this, because it is a disservice that we do. And I'm speaking for myself, right? I've been in the industry for quite some time. And for 80% of my career path or my career time, I didn't pay attention to these issues. And, you know, mea culpa, right? So I'm here trying to raise awareness about us thinking about accessibility from the very beginning of the design process, because this will be important to bring in, to include people with disabilities early in the process. And it helps everyone, you will see.
And then, yeah, to continue expanding on that, yeah, again, if you simply put lorem ipsum, that's actually what's going to be is going to be read by assistive technologies, and that's not a good experience. And when you're thinking of user testing, the usability test happens late in the process a lot of times, and that has to do with not being able to create tangible HTML code that can be interpreted with assistive technology.
Or for bringing a content designer for that matter, right? So we always have
that
to
as
wait
well, yeah,
for copywriting at the end and accessibility at the end, and when the two elements join, and then we can start thinking about testing with people with disabilities.
Yeah. So yeah, to mitigate some of that, the way we're thinking about this is, thinking of like 2 stages or 2 steps. But the first one is to define the problems and really do that by thinking about content. And you might do that by relying on things like user journeys or user stories, user flows and diagrams or storyboards, but basically anything that can give you an indication of what are the pain points or what is the experience that you're solving for. And that's in a very abstract manner before you get into the second half, which has to do with the interface. And that's really what we want to separate again, continue to call out, is that, the more we stay away from aesthetics and interface and layouts, the more you're gonna think about accessible solutions that can be tested with assistive technologies, and ultimately make your designs more inclusive.
Right. So one thing that I want to mention about this slide, because originally we had created a double diamond here, and this audience here, I'm assuming you are very well familiar with the double diamond. If you're not, it's about diverging on finding all the problems, converging on prioritizing the most important problems. That's the first diamond. The second diamond is you diverge, finding all the possible solutions or ideas, and then you converge on prioritizing the solutions for the top problems, right? So those, that's why we call double diamond, right? A diamond for the problems and a diamond for the solutions. That's what you see over here. The first diamond is about defining problems. It's about defining the content. And the second diamond is about defining the interface, the interaction, right?
Yep. And then, I mean, another way to think of that is the quickest thing that we do as designers and even people in other disciplines like product and engineering, it's easy to jump on paper and then start drawing layouts. So again, there's a step before that, which is thinking about content. And so, yeah, again, content and accessibility end up being an afterthought, because we have, again, all that built-in bias and, challenges with, not having access to engineers that can code, or maybe content people that can create, copy or content for us. And then, yeah, we can get over those challenges with the next few slides, where we're going to be unpacking a bit more on how to close that gap. Poor content leads to poor accessibility. So again, I think we already talked about some examples of, again, if you just lean on Latin text or anything that is placeholder, that basically makes the experience not optimal for anyone's, specifically if you're trying to address accessibility. So one of the things,
you want to take on that? Go ahead.
Yeah. I'll continue with this. But yeah, one of the areas or one of the approaches that we have been looking into is content first methodology that basically allows us to continue prioritizing accessibility early in the process. So early before you even start, drawing sketches or flows. This is about, okay, how do we think about the content which is gonna be useful later for being able to create accessible prototypes. And there are some publications, and one of the approaches that we have been experimenting with is priority guides, which we did not necessarily come up with, but there have been some folks before us that have been writing on the subject and actually documenting a pretty detailed approach for how to do this. We included the link here if you want to scan the QR code. We'll also share the presentation, so you'll have the link to the materials. But to dig into this, we'll explain a bit about priority guides and how that serves as an approach to document content. And basically what it is designing with words. So you can think of this as almost creating an outline of your experience. So this could be a single page, or it could be an entire flow. Like if you're maybe working on a shopping experience, or maybe you're working on a sign up or onboarding flow, or you're just optimizing a landing page. So this is literally verbalizing or articulating in words what your content is going to be on those pages. And it looks a bit like content boxes, and the key to that is that those things get sorted by user needs. So you get to prioritize what is most critical for your users. And again, this is without thinking about layout. So it starts as a mobile, mobile template, if you will. And it naturally forces you to think about, okay, what's going to be the first thing, the second thing, and so forth. Marcelo, I'll let you jump in here, if that's okay.
Absolutely. So you can think of in two ways, right? So there are 4 opportunities here up to this point, up to the wireframing point, where we can start interacting with users and getting feedback. First is doing interviews. We do user research, right, to understand their pain points, their needs. And then typically we jump straight into conceptualizing, and then we put a mock-up in front of them and just to get feedback. So we're jumping from user research to wireframing. What content first approach proposes is that we think about priority guides, and then we build an intent framing. Like Diego was saying, the intent framing, it's a 1-column layout with cards about the content. So if I want to buy a flight ticket, what is the most important thing that you want to do first? Search, right? Enter, search. So that is the most important thing. But you go on some airline site, you see a banner, you see a bunch of things, and then book your next trip, something like that. Is that really the first thing that I want to do? Right? So it's thinking about the priority of the user and just thinking about content, right? I'm going to show you some example of the priority guides. So on the first box, you see just a template. And the second box is an example, a filled in example. And by the way, I'm going to be sharing a Figma template of this thing if you're into Figma. So the idea is you write a headline. right? I want to search for jobs, right? And then you write a description. And if you really want to expand on that, you write the role and you write the expected action from the user. But you don't need to do the last two, all right? And then the Figma component, you can turn things on and off. You just work with headlines and description. I like working just with headlines and description. Think about this way. The headline is your heading of your page. And as a best practice, as an accessibility best practice, a heading line should be simple, should be short, supported by a descriptive sentence, right? So always bring a heading and a paragraph, right? And then I can, perhaps in another presentation, but you can take you can use area attributes to support the heading with the paragraph just below. You can say, oh, when the screen reader goes in this section, which means the search job section, take the heading, take the paragraph and read it out back to the assistive technology user, okay? So it's like Lego pieces. The content is like Lego pieces. So you have the field in guide example, and all I'm doing after is I do search for jobs and I do location. That's my next content block. But one thing that you need one thing that's very interesting, and if you're into SEO as well, a page has a title, right? Any web page has a window title that goes on a tab, which also has a description meta data that goes into SEO for search results, right? So you're already thinking about that as well. And
Yeah,
the next thing, go ahead, Diego.
No, yeah, if I can jump in really quick. So this might be getting a bit too technical for anyone that hasn't done this. And I'm going to guess everyone, if not most of you have not done this. The way we're showing it here is, if you were to digitize it, but you could also do this on paper. Really what is trying to get you to do is, again, prioritize what your content is going to be, which we're showing an example on the right. But more than that, again, you're already thinking of your headlines, what's going to be your H1, H2s perhaps, and then, thinking about headline hierarchy, which a lot of people that use assistive technology rely on. And then when we talk about roles, that gets a bit into the native HTML elements, right? So if you're gonna be calling something a button or a link or a paragraph or any of the standard, properties, and that's one of the areas that gets technical for me as a designer. So it's one small item that requires a bit of thinking if you're not as comfortable with coding on HTML, if you will. And it took me a lot of practice, so there's a bit of a learning curve here when you're trying to define roles. And Marcelo mentioned areas, so that's kind of the next layer, where if you're really getting going with accessibility, is one of the aspects that I've been doing a lot of learning and experiments like this that basically have helped me get better at articulating and advocating for accessibility. And then what goes with this, which I'm kind of jumping ahead, is when you start connecting this with an assistive technology like a screen reader, it comes together. And that has been the biggest learning for me, is like, okay, everything you define here actually makes the screen reader experience a lot better.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
Let me take the opportunity to share something else with you. See here. Just so you understand how screen readers talk to the browser, I have a short diagram here that I want to share with you. Yep. All right, so when you create a web page, you create using HTML. No matter framework you use, it always spits out HTML to the browser, right? And this HTML, what the browser does is it takes the code and creates what they call document object model, right? So if you're familiar with a div or a block, it's a div, it's an object. A button is an object, right? So it's what they take is to take these objects and they convert into a visual element. And that's what renders the interface. The assistive technology, at the same time, going back to what is interface, what is content, the browser thinks that way as well. The browser creates the DOM for the interface and the accessibility tree for the content for the assistive technology. So the screen readers, the Braille display, they rely on this HTML code converted into an accessibility tree. All right, I just want to bring that up. No. Right. The intent framing is just the next step, right? So we take the priority guides and now we can put in front of a user. And I'm going to be showing how to build an intent frame. So in the intent framing, it's just a one column layout exported in HTML and it's accessible, right? So I'm going to show you this. So at this point, we are bridging content with accessibility. You can think about user journeys, right? How to extract content from user journeys. You can build priority guides, you can build the intent framing, but you still don't have the accessible prototype. And I heard that Figma is working on a way to make the prototypes accessible, all right? We're all gonna cheer for that one, all right? The next thing is our responsibility to put in front of someone with disability to touch that prototype. So this is the tool, no Latin. Oh, before I go there, let me show you the template. If you go into the Figma community, you can type in priority guides, content first template, and then you can see the same thing here. So you can build your journeys and you can build your prototype. I can probably open this, it'll be easier. So this is the priority guide. And when you build one of this, you can, I don't have the editing right, so I need to copy. But you're gonna be able to just, duplicate those cards and start building your journey. Okay, so that's the intent frame. And then you can possibly extend that to a very low level wireframing. So we're gonna do an exercise. So we're gonna build a job search app that is accessible, and it will take us 5 minutes. I'm not kidding. We'll try to make it 5 minutes. So any questions so far? Any questions online or here? All right, good. So everyone is expecting to see something. All right, so this is nolatin.com. All right, that's the website that we built to showcase that we can build accessible prototypes. We had an idea based on all the discussion that you just heard. We said, well, maybe we can do this if we can create cards and then we can just remove all the accessibility guessing work from the designers, and we just build those patterns and it just spits out a prototype. I'm going to show you something very quick. So there's plenty of how-to instructions on this website. I'm just gonna straight to show you a prototype that I started building earlier. And if you go into this page, you can start seeing, let me make this bigger. So you can start seeing that this is a job board page. And this job board has a section called search and a description, right? And this element is search. Inside this, I added an element inside this section. And this section has a descriptive label, which is an input text, and then a search button that goes to a destination. I'll show you this in a second. So I can preview this. Move, it's hard to speak and use one hand. All right, so what you're seeing on the right with the black header is the preview of this intent framing. All right, so if I go here and I change this for search for jobs and save, if I refresh here, the search for jobs there, okay? Now, what you're not seeing is that this page is already accessible. So if I hit tab, just use my keyboard, I'm gonna refresh. Let's make sure I'm on the right window. All right, and I hit tab, I see a skip to link there. So we are building in some accessibility for you for free, all right? And if I scroll down, I get landmarks and headings. So landmarks are regions on the page that we often, as designers, we don't think about that, right? But if I take any website and I show you how a screen reader user navigates the page, they just go, they try different ways to understand the page that they are visiting. They can navigate by headings. So you can think if they are shopping at Amazon, they're probably going to go through headings, right? Or they can go by regions or landmarks. Where's the search region? So I navigate through the search region and then I type in and I hit search, okay? So we are already adding all of these for you. And the way you do, you can just do search for jobs, right? And goes to that section and you go, you see the visual focus for a low vision user. So you can use a lot of these elements without thinking about any interface element, right? And I hit enter, you go to the search results. Now, how did I make the button go to the other page? I'm gonna build this interaction very quickly. Go to no Latin. This is a new session that I know I don't have anything in that. Okay, so I create a new page and I do search jobs. We can do this. All right, search for jobs, right? And you will be intentful on a description. Even it's not the final, but be intentful, expecting that someone will listen to that. You will find the best job in the world. Have fun too, and mistype here. All right, all right. So I created a page. What is the next page I'm gonna need? Search results, right? So you can start thinking about the user journey. So I go by that. I create the user journey and then I create the page. I'm gonna add another page, search results. And I can say, we found a number of job opportunities for you. I never typed so fast in my life. And what's the next job on search results? It's job description. I'm looking for a designer role. I'm going to click on that. So I'm building the high level sitemap, if you will, right? That's job description. I'll do accessibility designer, right? This is the, yeah, looking for someone with your experience. Okay, so now I have 3 pages and each page has an ID, right? And the reason why I'm doing this way is because we built this by hand and we still haven't done the thing, but the idea is to have a drop down, select which page you want to go. So I know that I'm going to go from search jobs to search results. Now I can stop reviewing this. This will be the first page of my, and I can stop reviewing this. I'm just and okay, so I can stop reviewing this. This is my search for job page. I don't have any section. I have just main navigation banner, right? But the menu, I already have those pages, okay? Because I already built a high level page. So I'm just gonna go here and I have so many extensions, so it's hard to see. Should could hide this. Okay. So the hack that I've been using so far is I'm copying this page ID after the preview. And I'm gonna go, this will be my action, my link where I'm gonna take the first button to this particular page, search results. So I'm gonna create a headline here. And, you know, this is gonna be search jobs, search jobs by keyword. Or title, all right? And this is a section. I can say it's an input, or this is a section. And inside this section, I'm add an element. And this will be an input. And descriptive label, search, keyword, and title. And then after the input, I'll add a button. And this button will be, you know, search. And this action here, that's where I'm gonna put this. This is just, again, it's a hack. Oops. I hit enter before. Let me add another button. It's a good thing you're all patient, right? All right, cool. So now if I go back to my search, there you go. So if I click search, no matter what I enter here, it's going to take me to search results, all right? And this is, once again, it's all accessible. Like by now you get the picture, right? So how you can build something very quick that you can put in front of a screen reader user, but for that matter, right? I can go deeper. I can show you all the, let me bring the screen reader here. Let's see how this is gonna play out. Actually, I have one that I have built already. This one, right? Which shows the search, right? And then the search results. And I'm gonna go into my intent framing here. I'm gonna take my search results and I can duplicate this particular block over here, accessibility designer. I'm gonna clone this a couple of times just so I can have 5. Okay, so now if I refresh, so they're all that. Now, if I bring in the voiceover screen reader, which VoiceOver is the native screen reader for the Mac. There's NVDA and JAWS for Windows. So the way you bring down,
VoiceOver on Chrome, search results, Google Chrome, Marcelo, Visuary.com, window, search results, selected tab, group.
all right, so it's reading all that search results. Everything that I entered, it's already describing to the user. I have a couple of,
On the selected tab.
thank you.
Inside of a group. To enter.
So I have that bunch of screen designer tools that I can share with you if you want to test. There's this Chrome extension here. Believe it or not, it's for watching YouTube videos, and you shut the lights off. But I use to test this, so I can now.
Entering search results web content. Fit to a section. Menu pop-up collapse button.
All right, so I can.
Name. Menu item. Landmarks. Group. Navigation. Page navigation. Menu item.
These
Fit to a section.
practices, force you to put yourself in the shoes of someone who does not see.
That
right?
Message header does not have enough contrast to its background color.
Right. There are some settings I would love to spend time. I spend like 2 hours every week. I dedicate 2 hours to the community. And if you really want to dig in and learn about some accessibility tips, you can go, is that Flux Hours? Is that how it's called? Flux Hours. You know, Jason is there, Matt is there, Jordan is there.
To read.
There you go. So you can ping me and I'll be happy to share resources, show you some cool tools. So, but I can navigate through this, right?
Visit it, link, accessibility designer.
Right.
Visit it, link, accessibility designer.
And I can hit
Click to
enter.
a section, menu pop-up collapse button, navigate to another page to share this product, apply, button, apply for this job, form.
All right.
Share this prototype, button, group.
So it's very hard to achieve the using any design tools. That's all we have to share today. And we open up for questions. It's about 8 o'clock.
You are currently on a safe mode.
Let me just.
HTTPS application. Voice overall.
Yeah. So there
Marcelo,
was, go ahead, Diego.
sorry, no, yeah, there's a couple of comments or questions in the chat.
Sure.
And so yeah, I think the prototype that we're showing we're still considering more of an experiment solution. So No Latin is a tool that Marcelo worked on with his son and a couple of other people, but it's still work in progress. I think the point that we wanted to make is if you work on content, priority guides and intent frames, that is the foundation where you can take that and bring it into a tool that generates HTML code. So No Latin allows you to do that, but you have the choice here to go into maybe some of the website builders that get you pretty good accessibility, like Webflow maybe, and there's one or two more that don't come to mind right now, but we're not saying No Latin is the single solution. That is one tool that Marcelo and company have taken the time to experiment with. So yeah, you probably saw some things in the banner. I think some of the contrast was off, and maybe we're using all caps, which might be maybe too much for certain audiences. But yeah, so again, the point is, we wanted to illustrate how this can generate an accessible prototype.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to mention that I also have a number of slides that I can share in how each disability would benefit from, if you, like you're asking about users with cognitive disabilities, what are the design tips that we should do, we should apply to address their target user, right? So there are a number of, if you go and start digging accessibility for designers, there are a number of great tips out there that you can start learning. The important thing is to learn and practice. That's how I've been learning for the past 6 years. I'm not an expert. I do out of guilt, honestly, because it's been so many years that I just oversaw those issues, and now I'm just trying to catch up. All right. And here's some benefits, right? So definitely removing barriers. We build better experience for all. When we think about accessibility, we're building a better experience for everyone. It helps you. There was, I think Herman was saying, right, that you are so isolated, like the designers don't talk to the development team. And this helps bridging that conversation, because they also are trying to learn about accessibility. And it decreases costs, because if you try to address content and accessibility towards the end, first, you're not going to have enough time. Second, you're going to be redoing a bunch of things that you've done wrong, right? So I think that will help decrease costs as well. And questions, comments? Let me give you the mic.
Would there be a way in No Latin when you go into an individual object and then you're able to scan through the individual words, like the description, and then so that you have like a filter function for search results? Or is it just a set like the button function?
Thanks for your question. I'm going to share a website that I share all the time. We built a few years back. And so let's talk about some tools, right, that designers could use. Every time I got a new computer, I install a set of Chrome extensions to help me with accessibility. And I share that in the, what was it? In the link that I share on a Zoom chat. Sorry, I wish I could figure out how to hide this thing. I'll share the link with you in a second. So, but I have this Chrome extension called Landmarks, right? That I can show all the landmarks on the page. So what you're saying there is actually something that they lack of experience, like the screen reader users. We take for granted because we can scheme the page and we can jump straight to sorting these results, right? But someone that relies on the screen reader, they rely on the skip links, right? So I can use this one. Let me zoom this a little bit. I can skip to main. And if I do here, I can skip back to navigation so that you can jump sections, right? This is user experience for accessibility, right? And I can, I'm even talking about someone who's visually impaired, but there are a lot of people that only use keyboard, right? They can see, but they can only use keyboard for whatever reason, all right? Or motor disability. And I can continue to navigate through the breadcrumbs, and I get in the filter section, I can skip to product. From here, I can skip to product. If I hit enter, I can skip back to filters, or I can go to sort, or I can go to my product, right? And there was, we did this out of a series, an accessibility series in South Florida, and we counted like the number of tabs. Like, can you imagine going through, tabbing through this and going through each menu here right? And then go to the next menu. There's actually, I think it was 34 keystrokes that they have to do in order to get to those. And with 5 strokes, we can give them a very simpler navigation on how to achieve that. Does that answer your question? That's what I understood.
Yes, this example page is more detailed. I was just confused if the example page you showed earlier it was all the functionalities it had, but like after seeing the filters and jumping through filters, it makes more sense.
Right. So you're talking about the skip link that shows the menu? Okay, that came out of the PayPal accessibility team. And that's an open source script that we added to No Latin. And no matter how you build the page, it will build the rotor. It's the accessible menu. So if I bring in the screen reader again, and I'll show you how the screen reader users, they actually navigate using that type of menu. So this is the rotor, right? And they can navigate through the headings, right? Or they can select the links. Or here the landmarks, right? So what that script does is just gives you the landmarks and the headings, because those are the two. Those are the two main ways that most people that relies on screen readers use to navigate. Sorry, Jean. So that is actually an open source, like it's called Skip2. If you want to share with your team, Skip2, PayPal. And there you go. Okay. Any other questions online?
Yeah, you got me. I was typing, Marcelo, but there's one question around best practices for recruiting through usertesting.com. And I haven't done it recently, so I'm not sure how strong they are in that particular audience. I do know that there are dedicated companies now, like Fable, where you can rely, contract and rely on them to recruit and run user testing. But I don't know if you have other ones, Marcelo, or maybe examples around recruiting assistive technology participants.
Right. Yeah. Fable Labs is one company that they were tired to seeing people with disabilities being taken advantage and being asked to test interfaces and not being paid for. So they created a company around that where they recruit people with disabilities. They train them on, and they build UX artifacts for them to test. And that's a great company. I think they're out of Toronto. They've been with us a couple of times. So. Any other questions?
One question from the chat was, I think it disappeared. How important do you think it is for designers to define landmarks, specific ARIA features, or even semantic DOM versus leaving those decisions to development or working together? When do you do this?
I think it depends on your level of maturity and interest on learning accessibility. Depending on where you are on your career path, you are too busy trying to understand the UX field, right? But I would say if you come on a mentorship hour with me, I will always say, find your differentiator And if you start learning accessibility now, you are creating that differentiator for you. I was talking to the tech system folks, I think it was James. So we were talking to you earlier, right? So that's something that the companies are starting to look for, designers that have accessibility knowledge.
And
Yeah.
another good question from Melanie in the chat is the suggestion not to test with wireframes and instead to test with accessible prototypes?
Is there a suggestion not to test with the wireframes?
Right.
If you think about the accessible prototypes as a wireframe, why not, right? But I think no matter, I'm not saying that you should always test with or create test with accessibility in mind, right? Sometimes the budget does not permit that, right? If every time we say, oh, can we test this with some people with disabilities? Oh, we don't have the budget for that, or we don't have the time for that. There's always a barrier. But the service that you can do, or the benefit that you can bring in is, by nature, you learn about accessibility best practices and you embed that into your design process without asking for the budget. And that's how we did it. Add time over again, right? Until the point that someone with disability came and complained, so no worries, we can achieve that, right? So you learn in the process.
I've got a question for you, Marcelo. Do you find with designing with priority guides and starting the process with text, I noticed you put in the description, here are 5 results for you. And with application design, there's a bunch of different states that designers often overlook. Do you find that using priority guides help you account for all the different error states, no data states, first use states, and things?
Yes. So that's I'm glad you mentioned that, because when you are thinking about the content, you are thinking how the user will interact with the content. And if you have search, and by the way, if you go on that template, one of the things that we use the jobs to be done stories, which asks you, I have a template here. Right here. Somewhere here. So the jobs to be done stories have kind of forced you to, there you go, to follow this formula here. When situation, I want motivation, considering force, so I can have an outcome. So if you kind of fill these blanks, you will find those exception handling edge cases, right? Because you have a force. Like considering a force here could be, I'm on a go, or I'm on mobile on a bright day. So you can barely see your screen. So that forces you to think about high contrast, right? So there are a number of things like having, I like using jobs to be done story. That helps me with that.
And we're probably getting close to an hour mark, so it's probably about time to wrap up questions. But one more good one from the chat from M. How does that accessible prototype translate to an accessible published site or application?
All right, so that would be the next step, right? So the goal here is for the designers and developers to have feedback from people with disabilities early on. When you move from the accessible prototypes, you start building your interface with accessibility in mind. So you're already thinking about how I'm going to design my skip link, right? How I'm going to style my skip link, right? Something that I've never seen. I'm not saying, I'll speak for myself. I started designing skip link menus very recently, right? So stuff that we should be designing, we don't. And it's a design system component.
Awesome. And then somebody in the chat asked if you could share the Figma templates. And I know that Diego said you guys were going to share the slides and the Figma templates. So happy to have any resources you can share with us.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's give
I want to put Jordan on a picture, because he said that he was going to start an accessibility meetup soon.
It's called Out of Office Orlando.
Right, so yeah, I can definitely share. I'm on Fluxia Slack. I'm on downtown Orlando UX Slack as well. So you can hit me there. My name is Marcelo. And Diego is on Fluxia as well. Diego has been an amazing partner for these past 5 years. And thank you so much. I want to take the opportunity, Diego, to thank you in public. Thank you so much for everything that you have helped me and helped me learn.
And thank you, Marcelo and Diego, for sharing your wisdom with us tonight. I think if we can give a round of applause, both virtual Slack emoji and
Thank you all.
Thank you.
thanks so much. And we'll transition into a few slides here to wrap things up before we close out the evening. I'll share my deck real quick. We always like to wrap up all of our meetups with community announcements to ask open question: who's hiring? What events are happening this week? Is there anything that's coming up in the next month or so that you think people in the community should know about?
Hello again. So at the Orlando Museum of Art, we have our date night out. So it happens after work hours, and then you can bring a date. We'll have drinks. It is $30 per person, but it's nice because you can take a stroll in the galleries at night with your loved ones. You can bring your family. And also if you're a Bank of America card holder, we have free admission fees a couple times a week. I mean, not a couple times a week, couple times a month.
Thanks, Stella. Anyone else? Anyone online know any events that we should know about? I'll keep an eye on the chat. Don't worry, Jordan, I'm going to share that yours. First off, as Marcelo said, Thursday is Global Accessibility Awareness Day. So we have this slide in our deck from last month. But if you scan this QR code, it links to accessibility.day, which lists a lot of events that are happening, not just on Thursday, but throughout the week and about accessibility. It's a great resource. And just want to spread the news about GAD. And then to continue the accessibility theme, I know that Marcelo is planning to present again on Thursday at Access Plus Equity Meetup, which is available online as well. So if you look on Meetup for Access Plus Equity, you can hear Marcelo speak again. And then Jordan is here, who's the organizer of Out of Office Orlando, and they're having a mixer on Thursday at Grape and Grain in Orlando. And I've been a couple times now. It's a great co-working group. They meet every other Wednesday at different locations throughout Orlando. So if you haven't heard of Out of Office Orlando and you're in the Orlando area, look for that on Meetup as well. And then our next meetup for DUX, we're going to have just a social event for our next meetup. We're going to be back at 10:10. So we'll be launching that meetup soon. It'll be on our usual day. So if you're looking and wondering when the next meetup is going to be, it's almost always going to be the third Tuesday of the month. That's when we try to shoot for at least one event a month. So we'll be back at 10:10's social space there. Won't be in the main bar, so it'll be just us hanging out. And you don't have to drink. I know a lot of people like hanging out at a bar, feel like they have to drink, or you're around people that are drinking. You can have a soda. You can just come out and talk UX. You don't feel any pressure to drink. It's just a place we can meet after hours and talk about things like UX. And then as usual, meetups are great. It's great to learn about awesome topics and accessibility, and we have workshops and lots of events here. My favorite part of the meetup is always hanging out afterwards at Social UX. So once we wrap up here and we get the room all set back up, anybody who's interested, we'll walk over to the Woods, which is one place we've met before the pandemic. Open to suggestions for future social meetups after the meetup. But that was just one place that I know that we could probably have conversations, and it's a nice bar here in downtown. And with that, thank you very much for joining us, both online and in person. Feel free to connect with us through the meetup. You can post comments there, ask questions. All of us are on LinkedIn as well. And we will try to post the recording of this meetup on YouTube. That's our YouTube channel, that bit.ly link there. And then as Marcelo mentioned, you can find us in the Orlando Designers Slack, which anyone can join. It's orlandodesigners.info. Marcelo mentioned the Flux Slack, which I don't know if there's a good URL to join that. There used to be, if you Google the Flux Slack community, you'll be able to find that as well, which is mostly South Florida, but it's all of Florida UX Slack community. And then Wes put this slide together with, we get a lot of people who are interested in the field or are trying to make a jump into the field. So Wes put this slide together with a lot of different resources, a lot of other meetups and mentorship and entry-level career opportunity resources. So if you're new to the field or you're looking to connect with other UXers, if you scan that QR code, you'll have this document that has all of these links on it, which are helpful. We always try to share every week or every month. With that, where's my thank you slide? Thanks so much for joining us, everybody. And let's give Marcelo and Diego another round of applause.
All right,
And
thank
then
you all.
while Marcelo has the whole grid up on the screen, which is perfect, it would be awesome if I can grab a screenshot from the camera here of everybody. Hey, look, you're all up on the screen. If everybody who's in person could crowd around the TV without blocking it, we'll do a group shot. I'll stand here in the back and take the picture. I feel like I have to do the Wes selfie because Wes isn't here to do the Wes selfie. All right, if you look at the top left square, you can see if you're in frame or not. Oh, that's not gonna happen. We need a row at the bottom. All right, I'm not gonna do this with the camera. I want to do it. This is a big meetup group. I think I've got everybody in frame here. Well, I got to do the West selfie. 1 second. I have no idea if this is working. All right, I know I got a good group one, so if the selfie one doesn't work out, no problem. Thanks, everybody. And thanks, everybody online. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you guys. Bye bye.
Thank you.